Well, hello, I'm Chris McAlpin, and I guess I'm kicking this off like it's a podcast. Of course, it's not the chase. It's not the podcast. But to our sound friends and family, we appreciate you. We thank you for the trust that you put into us, and we feel like it's a big part of our job to educate, to explain what's going on in the world, or at least in the financial world, and to encourage you in a lot of this. So I'm going to cover a couple of different topics. I'm going to talk about the economy. I'm going to talk about the debt ceiling. I'm going to talk about the markets. And then we'll dive into some of the topics we've covered in both the podcast this quarter and then our client events. And so if you're not getting an invitation to those client events, let us know, because I want to make sure you get invited to these dinners, because it's for our family. It's for our friends. It's for our clients. We want to eat dinner with you. We want to hang out. We want to talk, and we want to educate. So here we go. What's going on in the economy? Essentially, we have a growing economy, but the speed of growth is slowing down. And of course, the big topic is inflation. And now, if you want to dissect this, is this statistical inflation, the kind that economists look at, or it's the actual high prices that you and I are paying? Think about it like this. We've got a ton of extra cash sloshing around in the system. I mean, our government flooded the economy last year during the pandemic with cash, just helicopter money everywhere, to businesses, to individuals, and into the markets. And that's going to slosh around. And it's just common sense that it's going to create some problems. It solved big problems for us, but it's going to create problems in the future, and that future's now. And so we're seeing those problems with higher prices due to supply chain disruptions. The higher cash itself is searching for assets, and it's pushing those assets' prices up. Okay? We have energy disruption because of the pandemic issues all over the world. And all of these are going to keep coming back to this topic of inflation. And so is inflation transitory? Well, it's just a fancy word for, is it temporary? Okay? I don't know why we don't just use temporary. But, of course, in the news, and economists like to use fancy words, right? So is it temporary? We don't know. We can't predict the future, first off. I believe that some of this is temporary, but kind of define your time frame there. I think the supply chain issues are going to last, 6 months, 9 months, maybe 12. Higher energy prices, they could last that length of time as well. It could take that length of time all through the year 2022 to smooth out the money supply that has just been piled into our economy and into our markets. So I'd kind of buckle in and expect to get some of these higher prices for the next year, maybe even the next year and a half. Okay? So what's this debt ceiling debate? Actually, what is a debt ceiling? Well, the debt ceiling is the credit limit, so to speak, that our United States government sets on itself. And so every so often, Congress has to argue over, are they going to extend that credit limit or not? And they usually tie it to a budget debate, and they got a lot of shenanigans and soap operic show taking place, and they kick the can down the road from October to December. So expect to see this argument again in December, and there may be some volatile days in the stock market due to it, and then I believe they'll pass it, and they'll kick the can down the road a few years to the next time they argue over it. Have we ever seen this before? Absolutely. They've had this argument 78 times, I guess 79 times before. The biggest one that I remember was back in the fall and the winter of 12 and 13. And you know what? We called it the big old giant fiscal cliff. We passed it. We went over the cliff. It was a big giant debate, and then the markets just took off. So am I predicting that the markets are going to take off on it? Not necessarily. But keep this in mind. Our bonds that we're using in a lot of our moderate and conservative portfolios, those bonds are flat in a lot of cases on the year, and it's a lot due to rising interest rates and things like a debt ceiling debate. Because that is where the core of the the core of that kind of problem takes place in the bond markets, and stocks are a symptom of it. Doesn't mean that they're on shaky ground necessarily. It just means that they're just sluggish in growth. It's frustrating to watch. But we do think that in the bond market, we'll see that overcome. We'll see in the stock market, we believe, that we're seeing what we call a bullish rotation, to where we're seeing some stock market growth. I, for one, am optimistic on the stock market right now. think it's a good time to be in them. Now, that's not a recommendation. That's not advice. That's not not telling you to buy or sell anything based on a video, by the way. And that's not just a compliance disclaimer. That's the truth. We just like what we're seeing at the moment, okay? So it makes me curious as to what's going on with a lot of the pessimism that we hear in the world. I recently read a book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And he says in this, it says, the seduction of pessimism in a world where optimism is the most reasonable stance. Why do we run to pessimism when we have so much evidence to be optimistic? Since 1945, the United States of America and every income class in the U.S. has absolutely exploded in growth. That's financial growth. That's the resources and opportunities to grow more wealth. But it's also lifestyle, diet, entertainment, education. All of our opportunities for everyone in the country has grown, and it makes me wonder, why are we so pessimistic? Now, listen, I'm not Pollyannic when I look at the world. I know the world's going to hell in a handbasket. But quite frankly, I know this because God's word says it's going to hell in a handbasket. I don't have to watch the news to see it. And I know that if you watch the news all the time, it becomes enormously scary, and it just feels so weighty that it's just going to crumble apart and it's going to happen tomorrow. But we got to remember that the world's been spinning like this for a long time. And I always encourage people, yes, watch the news. Sure, but don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid. I'm going to speak about that. There's a verse that speaks about that. I'm going to talk about it more in a minute. But it's caused me to wonder, why do we get so afraid about things? And Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky studied this and what they called the prospect theory in 1979. And it said that that we feel the emotion of loss 2 times more than the elation of gain. And meaning that because of our survival instincts, especially as it ties to our finances, we feel that fear and pain of loss more than we do gain. So we have a tendency to run to be conservative, to run away and be afraid, and to just feel the angst of fear in the world. And I'm encouraging you not to do that. Please don't. There's so much reason to be optimistic. And so during the podcast, during the quarantine, I guess, we started the podcast, The Chase. And I get this question because the Chase is about all things faith and money. And it grew out of our talks with you like this. And it grew out of a lot of the fear that was going on in society at the time. And so I'd get this question. I get this next statement in the form of a question, kind of a statement, and sometimes just an actual angry accusation of, Chris, how do faith and money go together? Or faith and money don't go together, and you're trying to teach 2 different ideas. And I get this range of anger or angst or curiosity, kind of runs the gamut of emotions there. And so let me connect the dots for you, because I strongly believe that you and we spend our time and money based on our belief system. Follow me here, okay? Every day, you spend your time and your money based on what I call a daily belief system. All right? And that falls under a larger belief system that you have. A belief system on life, death, eternity, love, value, what you consider good, the people in your life you love, or your own personal satisfaction. We tie that up into an overall belief system that in church we call faith. Okay? And then we spend our time, yes, but we talk about money. We spend our money based on what we value. And I promise you, everybody does this. I've done this for a long time. I've met with a lot of people, okay? And so how you believe about life, you're going to spend your money tied to that. And so when we teach about faith and money, it absolutely ties together, because it's how we spend it. It's how we plan. It's what we want to do with our todays and our futures and what we regret about our past, okay? So when I use this verse right now, 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and self-discipline. We can now look at that verse and say, think about it like this. God gives you the love, and he gives you the power, and he gives you the self-discipline, but you and I have to grab that self-discipline and apply it to the love and the power, to utilize it. And if we don't do that, we actually get the spirit of the fear that the world's piling on us. And every time we turn on the news, we see that, right? And so we take the self-discipline and the love and the power and we apply it, in our case, to financial planning. And then you can take risks if you want to or not. Either way is fine. You can be generous without fearing loss. You can enjoy God's blessings without guilt. You can plan for the future, knowing that, hey, I see the news and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Yes, it is. The Bible tells it. We're studying Revelation in Sunday school right now, and surprise, it's been written for thousands of years that the place is a wreck. And that's why Christ stepped in and to save souls, to save sinners. And one day we pray, hey, he's going to come back soon, right? But as we take that, what we hear in church, and we actually apply it to our everyday lives, to go back to the verse I said, so that we have love, so that we have power. We're not living in a spirit of fear. And I hope you apply this to your money, okay? I hope you apply this to the next conversation, that when you call one of your advisors here at Sound and you have an optimistic attitude because of this, okay? Because I say this often, all while you're chasing something good, God is chasing you with something great. Take care. God bless.
For disclosure and citation information, please go to www.soundfsg.com/disclosures.